So the follow-on from the CIPD panel last week of surviving your first year as an independent consultant and interim and building on your experience as well. We had a lot of engagement during the panel, but also afterwards. So rather than pull together copious notes, we thought we'd just jump on here and share the answers to things that went unanswered and follow on as well. So Sharon, over to you.
Cool. So, for those of people who are listening in and maybe watching a recording or maybe joined us live last week, I'm Sharon Green. I'm a professional interim qualified coach and sometimes consultant, I say, partly for all sorts of reasons, which if you watch the recording, you'll know. And I do three things for my clients. I do uh, people projects that engage on people change and transformation, um, people technology, so anything to do with selecting, implementing, making the most out of your people tech. And the final thing is my big bucket of wonderful experience, which I call the people experience. So I do those three things, one or two, or three. So that's me.
I think as well, Sharon, what I find is when you've got such a broad range of experience, it's difficult to niche down, like we were talking about.
Exactly.
I thank you for that quick introduction, and likewise. So, my name's Kelly, Kelly Venkia of Venkia Limited, and I'm an independent consultant who, for the purpose of the panel, was there to talk about my first year as an independent consultant, the good, the bad, and the incredible. Mm. Yeah, it was a really good discussion. So in terms of my business, it's evolved from similar things like people experience and change management to just mentoring. Because and in the spirit of building your own business, things can shift. So mine has shifted from those kind of strategic cultural pieces to helping HR professionals, people professionals, with anything really. People will come to me with a problem and ask me if I do it. And if I don't, then I have an amazing network, including yourself, Sharon, that I can refer them to. So yeah, should we jump straight into the questions?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so from my phone, um, Aaron, what would your advice about finding your first interim contract be?
Yeah, somebody said that they find a lot of people want experience, which of course, how do you get experience if you're just starting out? A big question,
Mm,
and one that I can really empathize with and identify with. I think getting your first assignment is always the hardest because obviously your permanent career is your track record and your springboard, but we all need the first chance to get a gig, a short term gig. And I think my advice would be keep trying. Um, Somebody's got to be the first to give you that opportunity. Um, and the experience trap, I think, is something that we can identify from permanent work as well
mm,
as from interim work. And I think you just have to keep trying. I remember thinking, oh my God, I'm talking to like four or five people. What if they all ask me to do the work at the same time? The reality is that they won't. I mean, if they do, you're really lucky. But I think it's about keep plugging away. Thinking about your chemistry with the people is really important. Thinking about your fit, and one of them will land. It's just a question of which one. Yeah.
yeah, I
What would
think
you say?
mm, it's it's difficult, isn't it? Because a lot what I found with um some feedback I've had, whether it be from like peers or mentees or whatever, is that feeling of it's never going to happen. So that patience is key.
Hmm.
Um, and also, building on the conversation from last week, having that heavily networked circle around you, and also filling the space, I find,
Hmm.
with the business development. So rather than having your Um, you focus on, right, I have to do this on a Monday, I have to do this on a Tuesday, and like give yourself permission to be flexible. And
Mm.
during the quiet time, think about what sort of business development that can be done, whether that is networking, whether it is a bit of marketing, because as an independent, you become every single function anyway. My follow-up question was going to be, how did you feel when your first invoice was paid?
Oh gosh. Well, relieved, I think. You always,
Yeah,
like, but also I felt so proud, really, that I'd kind of, yeah, I felt really proud that that I was kind of, I guess, in business. Even though you are in business before that, I just
yeah,
felt like I was in business. So yeah, it was great. I still
yeah,
remember it. Um, yeah, I felt really proud.
yeah. I similarly, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, people will pay for my experience. Yeah, of course.
Yes,
We would pay someone for theirs.
yeah.
It's that kind of like it's that moment of affirmation, really, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, what about this next question? Because I think this applies equally to whatever you're set up as.
Yeah.
So the next one was, do you recommend remaining in employment, i.e., progressive reduction in hours until you can leave whilst you build up your business? I mean, what do you think about that one?
Well, I've met quite a few independent consultants at the same point of their journey
Hmm.
in terms of setting up, but some have been in employment, some have not been in employment at all, which is why they're pushing for consultancy. Um, my particular circumstance was I was on maternity leave, so I could quietly build.
Hmm.
But some people are not in that position. So it all depends on the person's circumstance, really. Um, I think, I know one particular consultant was transparent with their employer and said that that's what they wanted to do. So please don't consider me in your succession plan, which I think is so powerful. And kudos to the employer for still like engaging and developing that person. Where others were like, oh, I can't tell my employer, so what shall I do? And I think the path of, and how you then design your business and build it, whether it's kind of behind the curtain or in front of it all depends on circumstance. But yes, you can absolutely do it,
Hmm.
you know, covertly or not.
Yeah, and I'd say the same. I mean, in the community that I run, where I hear lots of people's experiences at different stages, different types of business that they're running, I would say that you hear all sorts, and that's liberating, to know that there's no one right way, which I think is the key. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, cool. And what's this question I found quite really interesting. Does it make sense to start consulting without HR work experience?
Um, well, it depends what you want to act. First of all, what you consider to be HR, because
Mm.
HR has such a range of definition, doesn't it? You can be emptying the bins one day for engagement, and then being the most strategic person on the planet and everything in between. So it all depends on, what is your definition of HR. But
Mm.
also, I find that in this people profession, our skills are so transferable. I don't know if you find the same. Um, and that can take you in many different directions. One of my mentees in Iowa actually has been in HR for 20 plus years. Um, and now they're pivoting and focusing purely on well-being and nutrition. Um, but all of the skills are transferable. So what I would say in answer to that question is you can set up a consultancy, but you might want to be careful how you term term that. Uh,
Mm.
I'd be interested to know from that individual actually
Mm.
what they do.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, to see how they can make it. Because in my view, and I'll always say it, go with what you've got. Whatever your experience is, but just make sure it's relevant. Because it might not even be HR.
No, definitely. And I see, and I think of some of the people that I know, some of my connections that I know really well, who I know one of them like managed a big function, like 150 people, did all of the HR work for them really,
Yeah.
and has set up a very successful kind of HR advisory service consultancy for her clients, and it's from the background of her ongoing management, leading that function, dealing with all of the things that would ordinarily come across the desk, and that's cool. And then you see other people who've got very specific skills. I think it is about go with what you've got, definitely. That's the basis of your
Absolutely.
business, isn't it?
Yeah. You can create anything from something. Um, okay, so moving on to the next one. This was more for you, Sharon. Um, although it can be applicable, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
definitely.
How much flexibility do you have as an interim or associate?
I mean, this is a really interesting one, because one of the main drivers for me when I kind of stepped off my permanent career ladder, as it were, and became an interim, was that I really wanted flexibility. I just felt that the organisation that I worked for, at that time I was thinking, am I going to be able to have children or not? And then all of the people that I'd seen who, all of the female colleagues that I'd seen really didn't have a successful career post child anyway, which I'm sure has changed, but at that stage it felt like quite lacking in flexibility, I guess. And so,
Hasn't changed that much. Depends what organization.
well, so yeah, so I wanted to get more flexibility, I guess. So it's a big driver for me. And I would say that you do, and you also don't. Like, you do have the flexibility to decide on your days. Like you were saying, you're pursuing your business development, you're pursuing your marketing, you're trying, you're connecting and networking, you're trying to find work, you're delivering work. Um, but but I guess it's very different from having a permanent work career.
Yeah,
And so I think you have to, I think for me, there's a feeling of more flexibility for me. So
yeah,
I feel like I'm more in charge of my time and my control over my time, even though I'm not sure when a client's going to phone me up, or when I'm going to be on an assignment, a big assignment, a big project, or not. So I think
yeah,
it's that kind of strange, yeah, that strange dichotomy, as it were. I feel more in control, yet I'm not totally in charge of all of my time, because I've still got clients who've got needs and deadlines, etc. So, yeah.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
mm,
absolutely. And I think as well in this space, and I think it's transferable across, is like those boundaries that we need to keep setting and resetting. So like when I was working in a big corporate, you'd build relationships, you'd set your boundaries, your personal brand would be known. Whereas when you've got multiple clients, then you've got to keep resetting those boundaries.
mm,
Um, and clients naturally will test those boundaries
mm.
the same, just to see how much how much more they can get for their money as well. Um, okay, there was one thing that had a lot of discussion last week, Sharon, which
Mm.
was, can you please share the definition of interim in the chat?
I know, and
Um,
yeah, and this person actually, I did reach out to them and share, like, kind of it word for word, as it were. Um, and I shared with that particular person. I shared two, because I felt, but the first definition that I shared on The session itself was from the Association of Professional Interims, which says interim managers are a senior level external resource working short term. They have a proven track record, a depth of experience to draw from, and are experienced at solving complex problems and delivering solutions to business critical issues fast. And there was another one as well, which I shared with this particular person offline, which is from the interim. I think they're called the EO Executive Survey from 2023, sorry, which is interim managers or experienced executives who are temporarily deployed by companies at management or project level to implement changes, compensate for absences in senior positions, or supplement competencies in the company with their own skills and experiences. Because I think one of the people said, can you be an interim if you're more delivering at a project level? Is it always strategic work? And I think that both of those definitions shows that it can be quite a broad church, really. And
Yeah.
I think there is a place for you. It is about, I guess, maybe capacity, capability, competency. That's the kind of space that you're sitting in when you go in to do a project on an interim basis. Um,
Yeah. And
so,
one thing I particularly, and I know that we've spoken since as well,
hmm,
is as an interim, when you compare that with an independent consultant, as an interim, it's when the rubber hits the road, you get to see that side of things. Um, and as a consultant, it can be delivery and step away as opposed to like feeling that change.
hmm,
And that really resonated with me, which is why I wanted to cover it again.
hmm,
Because one of my biggest challenges when I was doing retainers for HR work before the mentorship work, I would get too involved.
hmm,
Um, it's really difficult to, establish my own boundaries as well as help others establish theirs with me. So that's something I don't miss
hmm,
when it comes to what I'm doing now.
hmm,
But yeah, I particularly like the way that you articulated that. So another interim question, Sharon.
hmm.
As an interim, do you invoice for your time and project duration, or do companies want you as a fixed term contract?
And I think this was a really good question, because it's something that we didn't get to talk about much on the actual session. Um, I think it can vary. So you will get people who are on fixed term contracts. Maybe they're doing a maternity leave cover or they're covering a substantive role in the organisational structure. And that's where probably something like particular legislation for the UK, like IR35, comes in. If you're in that space, companies will want to go for a fixed term contract, most likely. It's the most cost effective way for them to do it. And also, I think companies feel it guarantees you for that time, 6, 12, 18 months, whatever the duration is, which I think is important for them. Whereas for other pieces of work, it might be more project specific or short term. And that's when you'll find that you're, in this case, invoicing on a monthly basis, usually, or at the end of a phase for the work, whatever you agree with the company concerned. So, yeah, and invoicing and credit control and the finance bit is the wonderful world of running your own business, hey Kelly. So you have to get into that mindset of doing that and arranging that and deciding the terms. You know, sometimes the client will decide the terms or have terms, and sometimes you're in a position where you're saying, "This is how quickly I need you to pay my invoice," which is, yeah, one of the things to think about.
Absolutely. Our time is valuable, which
Mm,
is which is something that is taken me personally, um, a bit of a journey to, it's easy to have a conversation, isn't it? Or, you know, give away free advice almost. And it sounds weird saying that,
Mm,
but actually it's our time is precious because of the value that we're adding. And when it comes to pricing strategies and things like that, one bit of advice I would give to anyone listening is you have to know your value and be comfortable with your value.
mm,
And that can feel internally uncomfortable, but it's something that, if you're running a business and you need to charge for, then that's what you should do. But it's not so much about hourly rate, or it could be, you know, depending on the service, but you need to know your own value. And if people challenge that, then that's fine. You might be for someone, not for others. And that's something I'm a lot more comfortable with now.
mm.
I
Yeah,
don't know about you.
yeah. I think we all have to get to that stage of feeling comfortable about value and having the conversation about the money.
Yeah.
Um, which,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
which I think
When
is,
does the conversation like be just kind of a friendly exchange versus an exchange of services?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
definitely.
a whole different topic altogether, I think.
Hmm.
Um, okay. AI. So is AI helping you in service delivery? And if yes, how?
Hmm. Well,
I love AI.
I think, I mean, yeah, AI has been around for a long time. Obviously, there are a lot more kind of accessible AI tools around. So, yes, I think is the short answer. Um, I think, yeah, I mean, I find it really helpful um, as a tool to recommend to other people in my community, for example, who are maybe saying, have you got this? Do you know how to do that? Some like kind of questions that they might want to ask to other people. Obviously, you've got your AI assistant of choice that you could ask that to. I find it really helpful rather than a blank sheet of paper sometimes, or to check my work a lot of the time as well, to see if there are other sources that I'm missing. I find it's like, yeah, it is like having another networking tool, learning
Yeah,
tool, I find. And I enjoy play. I do people tech, as I said at the start, so I'm very interested in keeping abreast of what's going on, what tools are being used for certain things, finding the best tool, being able to add value to my clients in tech conversations about that. So for me, it's really important to stay up to date with that,
yeah,
and work out what
absolutely.
it's good for using and what it's less good for using, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I attended a business meeting not so long ago, and someone said that they felt that using uh, a particular AI provider was cheating. And I suppose it depends what people use it for, isn't it? Because there's a lot of tech behind, again, that can check for whether AI has been used. Um, if so in like an education,
Hmm.
writing
Yeah. I mean,
different things, but
yeah. I mean, when I post on LinkedIn, I always put a little disclaimer at the bottom that I don't use AI to do my posts, that any kind of typos and grammar gremlins are all my own. I mean, I don't use it for things like that. I know people do use it, and I guess if you're wanting to write and that's not one of your strengths, then use a tool. I think there's always a little bit buyer beware, I think, of using any tool. If we're talking about value and value billing and so on, the value comes from the total package, not from one particular tool that we might use for I don't
oh
know.
yeah, absolutely not. I think from an AI perspective as well, um it can be used to be very inclusive. So me, for example, my thoughts. I can have one idea about one thing, I can have one idea about another, and it helps me put things into a structure.
Mm.
Um, uh, which is that's kind of what I use it for. I've kind of fallen out of love with some of the AI providers, where from a an inclusivity point of view, like diversity, gender diversity, age diversity. I've put in to one of the uh AI providers. I'm gonna keep saying it. Uh, create an image of me in my working day. And it was, like a white male in his 40s or whatever, in a really big office wearing a suit. And I was like, wow. And I'd been using this now for quite a while, so it kind of knew the topics. And I followed it up with a different prompt saying, I'm female.
Mm.
And so it generated an image, and the office was smaller. There were pot plants. I was wearing something very suggestive, kind of off the shoulder. And yeah, it was like, okay, I like AI
Yeah,
for certain things that serve me, but for others, I'm like, no, that's wrong.
yeah, yeah. I think pick the tool, have great prompts, be mindful of its limitations,
Yeah,
but and at the end of the day, the value is in the total package of what people are engaging you for, which I think is the key thing.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Uh, at a senior level for interim or freelance, do you think it's important to have very deep experience in UK law, or is having light experience in the law the capability to interpret law, leverage case studies, etc.?
ooh, and yeah, this one and this person was transitioning from a US jurisdiction to the UK, and
Yeah.
I think that is hard. I think when you've got your experience in one market and you're moving to another, it's similar. I think the paths are similar to um, to if you're trying to do that as a permanent person. I think exactly the same kind of barriers to entry. Maybe your network's not so deep in that location. Maybe the concerns are that you don't understand the context, in this case the legal context. I think having a good understanding of the context, which the legal context of the jurisdiction you're working in, is really important. I've worked with people in France, for example, people in kind of Asia, and also in the US and Europe. Basically I've worked globally, so therefore understanding that there's some legal context to the work that they're doing and their location, I think is just really important. Obviously, I'm not a legal expert across all of these jurisdictions. That's not, it's not, it's not my, it's not possible for me to be all of that. But I
Yeah.
think being very aware of the context and asking the right questions and doing some basic understanding with all of the tools that we've got available, I think is just important. And if the person feels that there is a barrier to entry in terms of finding work, then I think being quite open and showing that you've got that understanding so that the client doesn't rule you out by making assumptions, I think is really important. That's part of the selling. What sales objections might they have against using me as opposed to somebody else? That might be the case for that person, and they need to be on the front foot in selling what they know and what they can do, rather than allowing the client to presume something that might not be right, would be my advice.
Yeah.
Um,
I completely agree. That transparency then can be reflected in the invoicing side of things as well, because, if you need to get additional legal support for certain things, then, the client being aware of what that means in terms of how it's being charged, as long as the person is transparent about that,
hmm.
I think you can do anything, go with what you've got.
Hmm. Yeah. And there's so many tools out there as well to be able to check. But I think part of it is just to, yeah, I think, yeah, be transparent, be open, be honest. Um, yeah. So, oh, we're nearly at the end of the
The
questions, but
the next one, I know, it's all interim. No one wants to be a HR consultant. No, I don't. Can you have a specialism as an interim? For example, my experience is learning management systems. Can you focus on interim roles related to those types of specialisms,
yeah,
or are they always more strategic and senior, as you referred to in your definition?
yeah, which we talked about the definition earlier. I think that this shows that I think that of course, like you can there'll be people out there who want to buy in that specialist skills gap capability that they don't have, you know, which is the basis for bringing in someone with different expertise, either as an associate, a consultant, or an interim. And so, therefore, I think, of course, you can. I think when we had this question in the session last week, I'd also said think about your skills more broadly, though. I think it is about thinking about your offer. So you might have specialisms in learning management systems, for example, but think commercially, are those skills transferable to other systems that people might have? How might I help
Yeah.
support that? Because if you're thinking about a business that is robust and can survive beyond the first year, you know, and beyond, you know, like then I think thinking about it more broadly is a really good thing to do commercially, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that so what, isn't it? Okay, so you can do LMS, so what? What's next?
Yeah.
What's next? What's
Yeah,
next?
and as you
Um,
said right at the start, your evolving business, businesses evolve. So it's about, you know, how do we as our own business evolve during that? I mean, this one is a good one for you. Like, I think, are there any membership bodies that you use for their legal insurance support? For example, Chambers of Commerce or FSB, or any membership? I guess who are your go-to membership bodies or other support for your business, Kelly?
Yeah, so FSB I am a big fan of. Not just because of the legal support and stuff, but they give so much economic data that can help you like, plan and help advise as well. The other one, so I have networks, which I spoke about before. So, your network being one of them, Sharon for sure. I also have more local consultant networks as well. From a business insurance point of view, FSB offer business, or you get a certain amount of insurance with FSB. But your clients, if they are with FSB, they also get, I think it's tribunal support or something like that. So there's a lot of intricacies with what they offer. For my own business insurance and for my own peace of mind, I've carefully kind of looked at independent suppliers.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm actually with Hiscox, and I haven't had to use them, but what they're offering, for my needs are really good. I did have a, a previous client who asked if I had business insurance.
Hmm.
Um, and I said yes. I asked what the purpose for the question was because every business should have insurance, in my opinion. Um, and they wanted to use my insurance for employment conflict and claims. I said what my insurance does not do is cover you for advice you're not taking.
Hmm.
And I think that that needs to be like quite clear. Just because you've got insurance, it
Yeah.
does not mean that it covers for everyone and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, similarly, I've got insurance. I always supply it or offer to supply the information to potential clients,
Yeah.
and also tell them what it does and kind of doesn't cover. And I
Yeah.
think shopping around, asking people's advice about which ones to use, and also look at if you're a member of the CIPD, for example. I know that they have preferential rates with certain insurers.
Mhm.
So yeah,
That's how I found Hiscox
yeah,
actually. And
yeah.
I found the CIPD like signposts resources really, really helpful. And um yeah, sorry, there was another point I was gonna make then, but I can't remember what it was.
Mm, mm.
Can't be that
No,
important.
yeah, I think that make sure that, I mean, I think insurance is a fundamental when you set up. Um,
Yeah.
and also the
Mm.
one thing that I would say is that I've had three insurers over the course of the time that I've been in business. I started off with one when I was self-employed, um, and then when I moved to a limited company, they wanted to kind of almost triple my premium and all my, and so I kind of shopped around and got a different one. And so therefore, I'd say be very, yeah, be commercial about it. And I'm with Westminster Indemnity. I really like them. They're quite simple, easy to deal with, and they do all of the things that I need. But yeah,
Yeah.
um,
The point I was gonna make actually, has come back to me now,
uh-huh.
is as a people consultant, when you have clients, they've got business insurance, if there are any disputes, so for example, if you've got like a performance management situation, always check what their business insurances are. Because
Mm,
when you're checking the levels of, what businesses, what levels of risk they're willing to take, and, if they have to rely on their business insurance for, people related situations, as a consultant, you need to know what
mm,
that is. Because then it shapes how you need to follow certain processes. So in order for that business to pay, insurance company to pay out, you need to have followed a certain protocol. And so a really good question to ask potential clients around is to ask for their business insurance,
mm.
just as that kind of another way of thinking.
Yeah, no, that's a really good one. Um, and yeah, so we've got two questions left, I think. The
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there was one person asked, is there some kind of platform or forum where clients advertise consulting mandates and new business? Um, so I actually got back to this person individually because they followed me up after the session, and so I kind of shared a few things. But I had to be I've not used any personally to get
Yeah.
my clients. And also there'll obviously be a cost to
Mm.
a consultant or an associate or a coach or um, interim or however you set your business up. There'll be a cost to that. So the key is to make sure that it's a cost that you're willing to bear, and that you feel that it's going to give you value and be productive. And also, I found, like, I was checking back through my kind of lists of these platforms that I've been tracking as part of my nerdy tech habit of like kind of what's out there, what's going on. And when I was checking them, a number of the platforms that I'd had from a few years ago are no longer in business, and a number of others are coming up online, to almost like be a consultancy dating app kind of thing. We've got clients who
Yeah.
are our consultants.
Right.
And so I would say that it's kind of a moving market, which you need to be really aware of, that it's going to deliver value for you and that you're going to get the right clients from it. And also that the clients are actually going to post there. I still find a lot of clients use their own networks, use agencies, use connections that they've got. So the market is quite fragmented, I think. So just be really careful about where you're investing. It's a business decision that you have to make. And
Oh yeah.
and I can't say, oh yeah, I've used this platform or that, because I've used none of them, but there are a number on the market, and you can do a search, and but just approach with caution, I'd say, and ask for recommendations would be my advice on that.
No, and similarly to you, I haven't engaged with those personally for all of the reasons you've just said. However, um, from a business continuity point of view, when people are looking at their business strategies, as a last resort, they may want to consider kind of, pay as you go, uh, you know, um, and looking on those platforms for quick work, depending on financial circumstances and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. Um, um, and then I
And then,
think, oh yeah,
sorry,
no, you go.
well, there's another question for you. The final question is about
I
there's a
think this
lot
is
of interest here. I love it. I absolutely.
but I think you could easily substitute interim for consultant or
Oh
associate.
yeah.
Yeah. So
I think there's a whole new discussion about interim associate consultant. Da, 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 da.
yeah,
We'll
definitely.
have another time, Sharon, I think. So having been an interim for many organisations for circa 3 years, whilst I enjoyed the networking, problem solving, etc., I did have slight panics when the term was coming to an end. The question, how do you manage the downs and the ups?
So I think this is equally applicable to the business you're
Yeah.
running too. I mean, in terms of I think I said on the session live, panic is normal. You know, we're all human. We're probably going. We might have got to the stage in an organisation and a project where things are cooking on gas. You know, we've got the rubbers hit the road. Like we're all kind of moving forward. You're part of the team. You know, kind of. And you've overcome the big problem that has brought you there in the first place. So I think that there is an element of we might be in a different place personally when we're at that stage of the project. So when the project's coming to an end, that's like a big change. We're on the change curve, you know. So I think it's fine to feel
Yeah.
panic. You know, that's natural. Um, I think I kind of say I've got a series of kind of what I called ending rituals, which are around how to exit, um, like leaving the client in a good place, feeling like we've had a good ending. Um, and so therefore that helps manage my panic if I feel it, particularly if the market's not looking good. You know, I think that might make us panic a bit more. Um, but I think that the managing it is about having those things that we know that we've got to do when we finish our business development, our networking, our projects that we've got to do for ourselves. It might be tax and year end and those kind of exciting things, or it might be planning a trip or seeing people we've not had a chance to see because we've been in the thick of a project. All of it can be anything, but I think that helps focus at the transition so that it's less of a panic and more of a planned process, I think.
Yeah.
And I think that helps manage it. So and I think over time, if you have those rituals and routines for yourself, then that helps smooth out the kind of any bumps in the road, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in addition to that, going back to the whole pricing strategy and value, incorporating, you know, there are going to be ups and downs. So how do you build that into your cost? And then how do you then, however you invest or whatever, it's just a constant, it's a marathon.
Yeah.
Um, so when you build that security behind you, where and when you can, um, then that panic will lessen as well. But I do like the thought of making sure the things that you haven't been able to do,
Mm.
that you focus your energy on those things when things are down a little bit. because that's why we're here, isn't it? The reason that we're in business like we are is to give ourselves a better existence
Hmm.
outside of work.
Yeah,
Um,
most
so
definitely. And I think for what you're like, exactly what you were saying, I think it becomes easier to manage like smooth out any bumps in the road if you feel like you've got a really good financial footing behind you.
yeah,
And yeah, so managing your business as a business, regardless of the size, I think is just one of the big takeaways that I would say. Always think of it as a business, even if there's just one of you. Yeah.
yeah. Even more so because when you are the business, you are everything hangs on you. So if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not taking care of your business and vice versa. So
Yeah, yeah, definitely. That was a big light bulb moment for me was when I realized that I was a bit like I was a proper business.
yeah.
you know. Cool. Well, excellent. We had so many great questions. We've almost done, yeah. It's almost as long as the original session, not
Yeah,
quite.
2.0.
So, but yeah, and people maybe tell
And
people how they can get hold of you, Callie, if they want to.
yeah, sure. Thank you. So you can go on my website, venkia.com, and there's a nice little freebie, mentoring freebie on there as well, because a lot of the things that people reach out to me for, um, the answer is already there, so you can sign up for that. And LinkedIn, really. I've had a lot of questions come through to me since the event last week with some really, really good questions, which we've covered today as well.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I think it's about, you know, and this is a learning for me as well, because I naturally I want to give back. But to your point of remembering I'm a business as well, it's okay, so where does kind of like good intended free advice
Hmm.
become something that I need to kind of sell, which is still one of those internal battles I have. But I've made some great connections from last week.
Awesome. And
What
similarly,
about you?
yeah, similarly, I would say, feel I'm always happy to what I call e-chat. So people can get hold of me on LinkedIn. I think it's Sharon Green Kiara on LinkedIn. My usual handle on most social media is Sharon G Kiara, Chiara, or kiaraconsultancy.co.uk, which has got a lovely landing page at the moment. That is my next project, is to get my website redesigned. That is the project for the moment. Or they can check out my community, HR Interim Networking Community, which is a community for interims, coaches, consultants, freelancers, basically anybody who works in the people space. And that's where I do most of my kind of pro bono, pay it forward kind of stuff. Because, like you, I have to think that's what I do there. And I also need to pay the bills. Yeah. But it's been lovely chatting and
Yes.
and sharing some more surviving the first year and beyond in our businesses. Um,
Absolutely. Thanks so much for, for doing this again. And hopefully this will help a lot of the attendees and those who couldn't attend.
cool.